Welcome back to the channel, and we'll be doing the instant reaction to what just happened between Atletico Madrid and Arsenal. Won all Champions League semi-finals first leg. Initial reactions, not the worst result. I came in expecting us to probably draw, and I guess it happened. So going back home with the scoreline is not a bad thing. I was very surprised with Atletico Madrid's approach to the game. They came in not really hunting, not really playing aggressively. They were letting us have the ball. They was letting us control the game, not really pressing at all, allowing us to have possession, allowing us to control the game for the most part, especially pretty much all of the first half, and then the second half of the second half of the second half. They allowed us to play our game, and for the most part, we controlled it, and we were, bore the fruits of our labor in the first half with a penalty awarded to us, to Gyökeres, who, off a lovely bit of pressing from the team, Zubimendi slips in a lovely little pass into Gyökeres, who gets bundled over by Hanko, and awards the penalty, and then bangs it in. Oblak probably had a chance to save it. It does go in between his two arms, funnily enough, and goes in, but 1-0 at the half. And then the second half, more of the same, but then a penalty awarded to Atletico because of a handball decision. Ben White, off a corner, it was played to the top of the box, and it was a wild shot, probably would have been saved or deflected, blocked, but Ben White is there, and unfortunately, when he turns his body to sort of evade the shot, his arm is flailing, and the ball just smacks into his arm, and unfortunately, Champions League is going to get given, and honestly, in most cases, probably will get given. It was goal bound. Would it have actually scored? Definitely not. But yeah, penalty, and Alvarez slots it in very comfortably as well. So 1-1 there. And then we survived a very scary period. They had a ton of chances in a short span of time, maybe 10 to 20 minutes of pure dominance from Atletico. We were struggling to maintain possession. We were struggling to clear our lines. We were struggling to make tackles. Everything was against us, but thankfully we survived. And if you're an Atletico Madrid fan, you're probably ruining those chances. They had some very good looks. Lookman had a couple. One of them, he evades a tackle from Ben White, receives the cross in, and potentially could have been fouled by Ben White, but he keeps on his feet, has an open shot in front of goal, but drills it right at Raya, and Raya does well to keep it out. And then the shots kept piling on. Even earlier than that, Griezmann had a little chip that smacks into the bar, and then a couple more chances where Lookman blazes one over the bar from I believe it's a cross that gets headed on to the back post, and he's waiting there, blazes it over. And then later stages, Molina has a shot that goes over the bar as well. So they had a ton of shots. Most of them, thankfully, were off target, and thankfully most of them were just right at Raya. I think Lookman had a couple there, just right at Raya. So if they were more clinical, we could be down going into the second leg, but we survived, thankfully. We got a bit lucky here and there, and so we survived that period. Talking of luck, we didn't get enough of it as Eze gets brought down in the box. Gonna be controversial there, as the ref initially gives it as a penalty, and then after being called to the screen by VAR, he overturns the penalty decision. And looking at it, is it a clear and obvious error? Probably not. I think there's enough contact there in the box to warrant it to be a foul, and it gets overturned. So pretty unfortunate there I mean, I think the match overall deserved to be a 1-1, but we did control the game for probably 80% of it, and it would have been nice to be rewarded that. But again, being, scoring your only goals off penalties doesn't really sit great with me either. So, whatever, you know. Can't get too greedy. It's still, Atletico Madrid is still a tough unit to crack, and we played for the most part pretty okay. So, yeah, in terms of performances, I think we did okay. Again, controlled the game for the most part. Our midfield pivot of Rice and Zubimendi actually combined quite well. Rice was dropping deep most of the time. Yeah, interesting to see that. Usually Zubimendi is the one that drops deep, it plays in between the centre halves and builds up from the back. But this time it was Rice doing that sort of job. And I think he did an okay job. Rice was everywhere tonight. He controlled the game. His passes were accurate. He led from the back. And towards the end of the game, he took it on. He went for a very, very long range shot that had no chance of going in, but it definitely showed his intent to try and get something out of nothing. And yeah, starting lineup again, the front three didn't really click. Madueke had one really good moment, beating two defenders and delivering a cross into the back post, which Hincapié receives. Unfortunately, his shot goes wide, but that was it. That was the only big moment from either of our wingers, to be honest. So still not very convinced with this front three. Obviously, Gyökeres does well to win the penalty, but otherwise didn't really have much support from his other two wingers. And to be honest, Atletico Madrid sat back really deep. They were playing in a low block. There was not much space for Gyökeres to operate. So yeah, can't really blame him too much for that. Arguably, it would have been a game state for Havertz to fit in right a little bit more, because Havertz tends to drop in as a false nine a little bit more. You can play to him to control the ball in the air a little bit more. I think that would have been a good game state for Havertz, but obviously he's out injured for now, so Gyökeres has the job to lead the front line, and did a solid job. Scores the pen. Not much more you can ask. Let's have a look at the sofa score, and some interesting insights here, as they did give the man of the match to Gyökeres with a 7.7. Quite generous, I reckon. Quite a generous rating for Gyökeres, maybe rewarding him for his efforts earlier on. Yeah, and then other notable performances: Rice with a 7.1, and Raya with a 7.1. I would have given man of the match to Raya. I think he definitely kept us in the game and kept us from not losing this game with some very key saves. I think most of the onus was due to Madrid's lack of shot quality, or lack of, the quality of their shot was not that great. Lookman obviously shooting it straight at the keeper a couple of times, where he could have done a lot better. But look, gotta give credit where credit is due. Raya in the right position at the right time makes that save. But yeah, unfortunate. Gotta say, Ben White definitely didn't have the greatest of his games. Neither did Martinelli. I think they're doing a lot hard done by Zubimendi and Hincapié. I think they did a okay job. So yeah, we did make a lot of subs tonight. With obviously Eze coming off for Odegaard, Trossard, Jesus, and Saka coming in straight swaps, and then Mosquera late in the half. Saka looked very rusty. He was losing the ball out a lot. So was Trossard. A lot of rustiness from these two players. They needed a bit more game time, but with only 4 games in the Premier League and then a maximum of 2 in the Champions League, how much more games do they need to shake off the rust? Can we afford it? well, yeah, hopefully they can find their form because especially for Saka, he needs to get back into his groove quickly and ASAP because we can't be playing this front three. It's just not gonna work. But yeah, look, positives coming out of this game: 1-1 draw, going to second leg back home, where we are still undefeated in the Champions League, and we've only ever not scored in one game, which was against Sporting in the previous tie, and arguably we didn't need to score. We held on to the 1-0 lead from our first leg, so the onus was on Sporting to try and score, and we controlled the game for pretty much all of it. So hopefully we can do that, plus get a goal lead. But yeah, all good from us. That's the instant reaction. Hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we can continue our season strong.